Yes, that's correct. That was Meire de Gashkacha Pratis. We started in Rav Samachem at Aleph, where it says Amar Rav Yehuda. The first word on the line, or the first letter on the line, is Zayin. Amar Rav Yehuda. Got it? Towards, it's a little bit below from the middle of the Amud. Amar Rav Yehuda. La Ivri Laila Elo L'Shinta. Night is created for sleep. Make sure you sleep by night so you could learn by day. That's what Rav Yehuda says. Amar Rav Shimon ben Lakish. Rav Shimon ben Lakish says, no, La Ivri Sierra Elo L'Girsa. The moon is created in order to provide light for a person that wants to learn at night. So Rav Shimon ben Lakish seems to be arguing that you should learn at night. So the Marshayir says it's not a machlokes. It depends if it's the summer or the winter. The Leile Tevis HaAruchim, you have such a long night, so then you shouldn't sleep the entire night. So part of the night you sleep and part of the night you learn. So the moon is created to give a person light. Rabbi Yehuda was talking about the Tammuz nights that are shorter, so over then you have to sleep those short hours of the night. You have to sleep the whole night to be able to learn by day. It's one pshat. Another pshat, I believe the Meiri says that each one said according to his abilities. Rabbi Yehuda was saying that he has to sleep at night, and then he learns by day. Reish Lakish was saying no, that he's able to learn by night as well. Everyone said according to his matzav that he did. The lange Nacht von Tevis and the lange Lange Tag. So what's the end of the expression? It's like Azevia Yar, yeah. Omri Leil Rab Zeire, they said to Rab Zeire, people commented to Rab Zeire, Mechadet and Shmeitzach. The halachas that you teach are very sharp, very clear. Amalahu, so he told him, you know why? The Yamami, because these are the things that I learned by day. I sleep by night, then I have a clear mind to learn by day, and therefore it's sharp. The daughter of Rav Chisda said to Rav Chisda, you don't have to sleep anything. So he was apparently learning the entire day and by night as well. And she said to him, you have to sleep something. He's answered her, now is coming the days that are going to be long and small. Rashi says what this means is after a person passes away, so then you have a long time to sleep and very short time, no time really, to be Mekayim Torah mitzvahs. So soon is going to come the time when I'm going to have a lot of time to sleep and no time to fulfill Torah mitzvahs, and then I'll sleep a lot. So now, during my lifetime, I have no time to sleep. Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, Anan poile the yamama anon. We are workers of the day. We have to sleep at night and work during the day. That's the simple taich of the Gemara. But this is an expression, a famous expression, Anan poile the yamama anon, that the Rebbe mentioned hundreds of times, if not more. When you get Aved of a person in the world, that the whole entire objective of a person's Aved in the world is poile the yamama, to machen lichtig in the Welt, to bring light into the world. It's actually a whole arichas in the Sikha in this week's parsha where the Rebbe says the very first thing that's created is oyer. Vayem Elokim yehi oyer. Even though l'chayre you don't need any light until later on in creation. Not until anything exists do you need light. The whole point of light is to illuminate when you have something. Why does Eibush create light the first thing? Because that's the objective of creation. Yehi oyer. To transform everything into light. Anan pala di yamama anan. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Rav Acha bar Yaakov Yosef upora. Rav Acha bar Yaakov would, he had his time to learn by day, and sometimes by day, when he couldn't finish up all of his shiurim that he had to do by day because he was busy with other things, Rashi says, with parnasa, tarad b'mezenosav, so then he would make up the time that he had to take away by day at nighttime. So we have different attitudes, we have different approaches of different Tamiroim regarding learning at night. Some said, yes, do learn at night. Some say, don't learn at night. The last one over here is that you should have your shiurim by day, but you could also use the nighttime to make up for what you missed by day. Amar Rabbi Lazar says, this goes back, spoke before about davening. When a person is shikri, you shouldn't daven. Even a shosli, l'chatchila, shouldn't daven. So the Gemara comes back to that now. Amar Rabbi Lazar, abomin aderech, person that comes from the way, al yispal shloisha yomim. For 3 days you shouldn't daven. Because the teirech haderech, for sure, Amalig Zeiten, the way a person traveled with the horse and buggy and the whole tircha of the derech, maybe even today also to some extent, depends how far you're traveling. So for 3 days a person shouldn't daven. It says in the Mefarshim that it doesn't mean you shouldn't daven at all, but the regular tefillah, Shmai Nesr that we daven, you shouldn't daven. You could daven at tefillah k'tzara, but the regular tefillah you shouldn't daven. We don't pass him this way, obviously, but this is this opinion in the Gemara here. Shenema v'akaptzem el anor, this is by Ezra, he brought the Yidden to Eretz Yisrael, he says v'akaptzem el anor haba el achva, or the Girsa, the Lashon of the Pasuk that it actually says, El Ahava, to a certain place. V'anachna sham yomim shloisha, we were there for 3 days, and then v'avina ba'am, only after 3 days that I have the clarity of mind to understand what's going on in the nation. So you see that it takes 3 days after you travel to get back your hisyashvas to settle down. Avur de Shmuel ki Yosef Orcha, Father Shmuel, when he came from away, loy matzli tlasa yoma, 3 days he didn't daven, like we just said. Shmuel lematzli bebeise de isbe shichra. Shmuel would not daven in a house that had beer in it. As Rashi says, the reyach, the aroma of the beer, caused him to be intoxicated to some extent, so he didn't want to daven there. Rav Papa lematzli bebeise de isbe harsi. Rav Papa did not daven in a house that had harsin, which is little fish that is prepared, maybe like herring, or it's prepared with flour and with oil. It creates also a smell that disturbs your kavan and davening. Maybe sometimes Shabbos day, when you come to daven in certain shows, it could be certainly pretty disturbing to daven. Some people come to shul in the first place for that. So Adarab, that's what brings them in. Rab Chanina says, a person that if you drink some wine, and then you could appease him, you could ask him to be meichel you, and so on. He gets appeased after he drinks some wine, so it's a good thing. Yesh boy midas kainai. He's conducting himself similar to the Eibishter himself. Shenema v'yorach havayis reach hanichayach v'gaimer. The Eibishter smelled the reach nichayach of the karbonis that Noach brought, and then what the Eibishter say, le'oisavayid lekal, he won't bring the mabel again. So when you drink wine, we said before, there was the aroma of the wine, the aroma of the beer. So a person drinks wine and he becomes appeased by this, he's acting similar to the Eibishter. Person that drinks wine and his mind becomes settled through the wine that he drinks. In other words, it's two things that could happen to a person that drinks wine. Some people drink wine and lose themselves. Rashi here says, daita mitarefes. Other people drink wine, adarab, it causes your mind to become settled. We had before in the Gemara, I forgot which Shameira it was, that he said that he can't pasken a halacha until he drinks a revius of wine. So for some people it causes a siashvus. So a person that drinks wine and it becomes misyashiv with the wine, yesh boy das ayin zakenim. So that means that you have a mind which has the das of 70 zakenim. What's the number 70? Because yayin nitten ba'ayin oisius, wine is the gematria, even though it says in the Gemara oisius, but what it means is, as Rashi says, it's the gematria is 70, the word yayin, and v'soid nitten ba'ayin oisius, and soid is gematria of 70. Nichnas yayin yotze soid. Usually, what's this gematria? Because when a person drinks wine, his mind becomes confused, metarefes, and the soid that he wants to keep to himself comes out. He speaks things that he shouldn't be speaking. That's usually. But this person that's not speaking soidis, so then that's not the gematria of nichnas yayin yotze soid. So what is the gematria? In his case, the gematria is that he has a das of 70 zakanim. Why does the Eibishter create wine? In order to be able to be menachem avelim through the wine. And also for Rishayim, that the Eibishter wants to give them some schar in this world for the little mitzvahs, or the little things that they do. So they drink wine and enjoy themselves in this world. The pasuk there says, Morei nefesh, a person that's bitter. So the wine is to give a person the simcha in this world, whether for an oval or for a rasha, in a case where the Eibishter wants to give him some schar in this world. If a person that does not have enough wine in his house, that it should be spilled and used as much as you use water, he hasn't yet come to the ultimate bracha in his house. That's what Rashi explains. Rashi says, even if he's rich, but if he's not so rich that he has wine being spilled in his house like water, so then it's not b'chlal bracha. Pasuk, when it talks about Maisa Sheni, it says the Eibishter will bench your bread and your water. So what do we learn out from this? Ma lechem shenikich bekesef meiser. So when it says over here lechem, bread, so what bread is something that you could buy with Maisa Sheni. We had this before, that the money of Maisa Sheni, a person has to redeem that money and do what with it? Buy food with it and bring it to Yerushalayim. something that's not regular food that gives a person mezainis, or it's not gidulei min haaretz, water, for example. You can't buy water with ma'aser sheni. You can buy lechem with ma'aser sheni. So ma lechem shenitn b'kesef ma'aser sheni, af mayim, the water that the pasuk is speaking about here, what kind of water is this? Shenikich b'kesef ma'aser sheni. It's water that you can buy with ma'aser sheni. Umay niu, so it doesn't really mean water. What is this? Yayin. It really means wine. So the water here is wine. But kakari lemayim. But the pasuk refers to it as water. Why? Because he nishbach bebeisa kamayim ikebracha. If you have so much wine in your house, that wine is like drinking water. The Eibusha will bench your bread and your water because there's so much wine that it's like water. Then ikebracha. Then you've come to the ultimate bracha in your house. V'iloi, if you don't have that much water and wine in your house, so then you haven't come to the ultimate bracha. This is the source of the minig that the Ramah brings when you get to Avdallah, that you pour over the kais by Avdallah. Start the week in such a way that the nishbach mayim, that the wine should be spilled over in the becher in order to start with this hashpah of the ashiris, of the richness to this. But this is the makkah, this Gemara. Our minig is also by kiddush, always b'chlal. It's just a chabis le'ibegisen.
So a minig managed to spill over the floor.
Yeah, that's what is brought in the Ramah actually. It says it beferish. There should be nishbach ala aretz. But it says, yeah. I don't think we do this. I haven't seen it being done. So yeah, you've seen done, Baha?
I've seen people manage to spill
on the water. On the water. That's what it says in the Ramah. That's the minig. There should be nishbach kayayin. That question about tashchus is even, you could ask on the Lamashal when you put out the fire from the Avdallah candle in the wine. So that wine in the plate is baltashchus. It's full of wax. You can't drink it. That
could be
that's just like that's enough dishbach and karka, he's saying. Okay. Okay, sehr gut. Oder Niggen, oder chassidische Niggen, stavya pitu. Man trinkt yayin azay vi mayim. Here's the market. It's nishbach yayin kamayim. Amar Rabbi Eloi, b'shloishe dvarim adan nikeh. Famous Gemara, the three things that you can recognize the nature of a person. The kaisai, what happens to a person when he drinks? As Rashi here says. What happens, like we just mentioned before, daitum yusheves olav. If he drinks, does he lose himself completely? Or daitum yusheves olav. The kisai, how he treats when he gets to his business. The kisai, usually people teach differently than Rashi says. Kisai, that Rashi says, it means that the person deal honestly in business. Usually people teach bekisai when he gets tzedakah, right? Does he cheap with his money? Does he give tzedakah? But Rashi says no, it means whether he does business dealings honestly. Or bekasai. And when he gets to his kas, she'ena kaptan yoiser midai. Also interesting, Rashi says kasai means not to be a kaptan yoiser midai. There are certain things that demand a certain level of kipeda. No, that could be beseder. But to be a kaptan yoiser midai, that's a problem. V'amrilei, and others say af b'schoikai, b'schochakai. Also, the way you see a person, the way he laughs, if a person laughs b'koil ra'ash gadol, so then it also shows on a certain nature in the person. We come back to Masech Eiruvin. So Rav Yudah Marav says this goes back to what we learned in the beginning of the Peirik, that when you have a guy that lives in a chatzer, so then there's a problem. You can't make an Erev Chatzeris together with a guy. Let's again go back to the basic point we learned in the beginning. There are three options you have in Erev Chatzeris. Either you make an Erev Chatzeris, or there's another option, Bittul Rishus, when one person says, I'm mevatel my rights. I give up, I renounce my rights to be used in this Chatzer. It's called Bittul Rishus. And then there's a third option, which is the only option to be used when there's a guy in the Chatzer, and that is that you have to rent from the guy his space, his rights over there in this Chatzer. Okay, so in the Mishnah there was actually machlokes about this. Okay, we'll see more in the Hamshach the Gemara. I'll bring back what we learned before, but let's see the what the Gemara says. So, Omer Rav Yudah Marav, Yisrael v'Nochri, b'pnimis. What happens if you have a Yid and a Goy that are living inside a Chatzer, on the inside Chatzer? V'Yisrael b'Chetzayna, and then on the outside Chatzer you have one Yid living there. So you have two Chatzeres near each other. There is an inside Chatzer and there's an outside Chatzer. The inside Chatzer there's a Yid and a Goy, one Yid and one Goy, and on the outside Chatzer there's one Yid over there. What's going to be the halach in such a case? Ba Ma'isa Lifnei Rabbi, so this story comes in front of Rabbi V'Asar. Rabbi says it's a problem. You have a guy living there with you, it's a problem, it's an Isser. V'Lifnei Rab Chia, this comes in front of Rab Chia V'Asar. Rab Chia also said that it's Asar. This is what Rav Yudah Marav said. So what's the Chiddush over here of this case? So what it says in the beginning of this Perek is, there was a machlokes of Rab Meir and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. According to Rab Meir, even if there's one Yid living with one guy, the fact that there's a guy there is an issue. According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, there's only an issue if there's two Yidden together with a guy. If there's one Yid with a guy, then it's not an issue. What's the reason? So if you remember the reason we learned in the beginning, B'chlal, a guy that's there shouldn't make any issue with Erev Chatzeres. The guy, just ignore him. The dira of the guy is insignificant. Elamai Chachamim did not want Yidden to live with Goyim, so therefore Chachamim made a takana to make it difficult for a Yid to live with a guy. What was the takana? That if a guy lives together with a Yid, the only way you can continue living there is if you're going to rent from him a space for Erev Chatzeres, in order to be able to make Erev Chatzeres. And what's going to happen? The guy is not interested in renting that space to you. You're going to have a problem. So that's going to motivate a Yid to move out, not to live together with a guy. So Rab Meir says that's even if it's one Yid with one guy. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, no, it's not with one Yid and one guy. One Yid and one guy, Chachamim didn't make their takana in that case, because usually you don't have one Yid living together with one guy. Why not? A Yid is afraid to live alone with one guy. If there's a few Yidden living in the Chatzar, they're not afraid to have a guy living amongst them. One Yid with one guy, you're afraid, who knows what the guy could do to you. A guy is a Shefech Damim, the Gemara said before. So there the Chachamim didn't make their takana. So the shaila over here in this case is, you have one Yid living with one guy in the inside Chatzar. So over there it's only one Yid with one guy. But then on the outside Chatzar, there's another Yid that's living there. So is that a problem? So the Gemara says, yes, Asa. Rabbi was Ased, Rab Chia Ased, because of the guy that lives outside. The guy that lives inside, and there's Yid inside Chatzar, and there's Yid in the outside Chatzar. Yosef, Rabbi, Rav Yosef, B'shili Pirkei, Rav Sheishes. So Rabbi and Rav Yosef was sitting at the end of the shir of Rav Sheishes. V'Yosef Rav Sheishes, and Rav Sheishes repeated this statement from Rav. And V'Kama Rav Sheishes said, Kaman Omra Rav L'Shmaite. According to who did Rav say this halacha that it's going to be a problem in this case? Rab Meir. He said it according to Rab Meir. Why according to Rab Meir? Rab Meir says one Yid with one guy is a problem. So the fact that on the inside Chatzar there's only one Yid and one guy, and they asked, so that goes only according to Rab Meir. Not according to Rab Eliezer ben Yaakov that says only if it's two Yidden. On the inside Chatzar there's no two Yidden. Karkish Rabbe Reishe. So Rabbi shook with his head in agreement to what Rav Sheishes said. Yeah, I agree to what Rav Sheishes says, that it's only according to Rab Meir. Rav Yosef, Rav Yosef commented on this. Trei Gavri Ravrevi Kerabanon. Two such great people like these Rabbanon, like Rav Sheishes and Rabbi, Litu Bahai Milsa, should make a mistake regarding this. Rab Meir. If this is being said only according to Rab Meir, Lamali Yisrael B'Chetzayna. So why in the story here are we saying that there's another Yid that's living in the outside Chatzar? According to Rab Meir, even if there's just one Yid and one guy, it's a problem. So why does it say that there was another Yid in the outside Chatzar? And only then, it would seem like only then is there an Isser. Why? That would go according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Only if there's a second Yid there in the Chatzar Chetzayna. So the Gemara says, V'chitema. Now if you're going to say that that's lav dafke, Ma'aseh shoya kachoya, that's just the way the story happened. The way the question was asked over there was in a case where there was another Yid that happened to be living in the outside Chatzar. But even without him, it would still be a problem, even with one Yid and one guy, like the opinion of Rav Meir. So the Gemara says, no, it's not just a Ma'aseh shoya. But v'habayim minei Rav, the question was asked from Rav. Pinimi b'mekoymai mahu. A person in the inside Chatzar, the Yid and the guy in the inside Chatzar, forget about the outside Chatzar. To make an Erev Chatzeres just on the inside Chatzar, and you have one guy with one Yid there, what's going to be the halacha? V'amalan, and Rav said, mutter. It's not a problem. In the inside Chatzar itself, you want to make an Erev Chatzeres, if there's just one guy there, the one guy does not make any issue. Ve'ela mai Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So the Gemara says, so who does this go according to? This goes according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Again, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds only if there's two Yidden is there a problem with a guy that lives there. If so, says the Gemara, if it goes according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, ha'amar ad sheyiyu shnei Yisraelim oisrin zeh al zeh. It has to be two Yidden that are living in the same Chatzar. Two Yidden that are living in the same Chatzar in such a way that they aser one on the other. Over here, there's one Yid living in the inside Chatzar, and there's another Yid living in the outside Chatzar. Two Yidden that are living in two Chatzeres, do they aser and want each other to be able to carry out to their Chatzar? Well, not. The Yid living on the inside Chatzar can carry out to his Chatzar. The Yid living in the outside Chatzar can carry out to his Chatzar. They only aser on each other if they're living in the same Chatzar. Elo, so the Gemara says, and here the Gemara brings back something that we once mentioned before. When you get to this case, when you have two Chatzeres that are right near each other, and there's the inside chutzner, and there's the outside chutzner. So the problem is, the people from the inside chutzner, in order to get to the Reshus HaRabim, how do they get out? They have to walk through the outside chutzner. So the question is, the fact that the people on the inside chutzner walk through the outside chutzner, do they cause an isser because they're also using the outside chutzner together with the person, because they also walk through there. So you can't separate it as two separate chatzeres. They have to walk through. So there's a machlekes about this. It's actually here later in this Pedic. So Elo ke Rabbi Akiva, we're going to have to say that this follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The Omar Rabbi Akiva said, Regel hamuteres b'mekayma, a person that's in the place that he is, it's mutter. In other words, like our case, the inside chatzah. On the inside chatzah, he made an eid of chatzeris. Over there, it's mutter. I said as shalei b'mekayma, but because he walks through the outside chatzah, so the fact that he walks through there, he asers shalei b'mekayma, not in the place where he lives on the inside, but he asers the outside chatzah because he walks through there. So if so, the point is that you have two Yidden that are living here that asa one on another. They're connected to each other, even though one's on the inside chatzah, one is on the outside chatzah. So you have two Yidden and a guy. So therefore the fact that the guy is there is a problem. Fragt the Gemara, wait a minute, but if this is the case, so then lama li nachri. What's the guy? Why are we mentioning the fact that there's a guy here? Just the very fact that there's two Yidden and the Yid on the inside chatzah uses the outside chatzah, so that requires an eid of chatzeris, according to Rabbi Akiva, in order to be able to carry in the outside chatzah. Nothing to do with the fact that there's a guy there. Lama li nachriya, fili Yisrael nami, even if it would be only two Yidden here or three Yidden here, you would also need an eid of chatzeris. Why are we b'chlal mentioning that there's a guy here? Amar Ravuna Bereid Rav Yeshua, so Ravuna Bereid Rav Yeshua explains, La'olam ke Rabbi Eliezer be Yaakov. This story goes according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Only if there's two Yidden and a guy, then the guy is a problem. Not if it's one Yid and a guy. Rabbi Akiva. And it also follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that a Yid on the inside chatzah that's walking through the outside chatzah, so these two Yidden aser on each other because he's walking through the outside chatzah. Over here, the two Yidden that are living there, they made an eidov. So that's not the issue. But then, what's the problem? Because there's a guy here. The guy doesn't participate with the Eiruvin. He can't participate with the Eiruvin. And not only he can't participate, he makes a problem for the other two Yidden living there. As long as there's one guy living there amongst two Yidden, so then the whole Eiruvin is null and void. It's gone. It's not worth anything. That's the Gzeir of Chachamim. They don't want the guy to be living there. So they said if a guy is there, it doesn't work. If there's no guy there, it wouldn't be yasser. The two Yidden made an Erev Chatzeris. Okay, so that's the story over here in this case. So over here we were speaking about a case where you have a Yid and a guy in the inside Chatzer, and you have another Yid living on the outside Chatzer. And in such a case, what's the conclusion of the Gemara? That even if the Yidden make an Erev Chatzeris, because there's a guy living amongst them, it's still going to be a problem that the whole Erev Chatzeris is null and void.
Why there have to be a Yidden in the Pnimi?
Huh?
Why there have to be
Two, there has to be two Yidden there. According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, there has to be. It's only in a case where there's two Yidden that the fact that the guy is living there is a problem. If there's no two Yidden, then there wouldn't be any problem. Now the Gemara asks, it says, could we apply this into an opposite case? How about Rabbi Eliezer asked Rav, based on what you just said, Yisrael v'nochri b'chitzayna. What's going to be in a case if the Yid and the guy are both living in the outside chatzah? And v'Yisrael b'pnimis, and there's a Yid living on the inside chatzah. Should we apply the very same halacha that you just said here? You have two Yidden living there, and you have a guy living amongst them, so it's going to be a problem with their Erev Chatzeris. What's the halacha? What would be the reason it should be different? Ma'inaf gemin, if the guy and the Yid are on the inside chatzah or on the outside chatzah. So the Gemara explains. So before I read the Gemara inside, let me go back to the point that I said before. What's the reason why Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that only if it's two Yidden with a guy is it a problem, but one Yid with a guy is not a problem? The reason is because one Yid with a guy is not common. A Yid is not going to want to live alone with a guy because he's afraid of the guy. He's afraid of a guy that's a shefich damim. Two Yidden and Goyim, that's something that's common. So that's something that Chachamim made a takana that you shouldn't have a guy living amongst you. So now the question is, in a case where you have two Yidden and a guy, but it's a Yid and a guy in the outside Chatzar, maybe over here, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov would say that it's not a problem. Let's see, the Gemara explains why not. Hasam, Taimim, Mishum, the Shchiach, the Dayer. Over there, should I say, in the case where the Yid and the guy are living on the inside Chatzar. So over here, in such a case, it's more common, the shchiach, the dayer, the mirsas nochri. In such a case, it's common that it should happen that the yid should be ready to live with a guy in inside chutzner. So you have to imagine this case over here. You're living in a chutzner, and then the outside chutzner there's a yid, and on the inside chutzner there's a yid and a guy. Does that yid feel safe together with the guy on the inside chutzner? So the Gemara says yes, he feels safe from him. Why? Because the Savar Hashter Asi Yisrael, the Yid that lives in the outside Chatzar, is going to come into the inside Chatzar. V'amar li, and he says to me, Yisrael dahava gabah checha. The Yid that was living together with you, where is he? What happened with him? The only way the Yid on the inside Chatzar could get out is if he walks out through the person on the outside. So the Yid that's living on the inside Chatzar always feels a certain protection from the Yid that's living in the outside Chatzar, that Yid on the outside could always come and check up on me on the inside. If he doesn't see me for a day, he's going to come and ask the guy, what happened to the Yid that's living with you? I didn't see him passing through my Chatzar. I didn't see him going anywhere, so where is he? So the Yid on the inside Chatzar is going to be ready to live with a guy there. So therefore the Gzeir of Chazal, that the guy should disturb the Eid of Chatzeres, would apply in such a case. Avol, over here. Avol hacha, but if the case is the opposite, if the case would be the opposite, that the Yid there's one Yid that lives on the inside Chatzar, and there's a Yid and a guy that live in the outside Chatzar, aminelei nafakazalei. So the guy feels like he could do whatever he wants to the Yid. He's not afraid from the Yid that's living on the inside Chatzar that's going to come and check up on him. Why? Because if the Yid is going to check up on the guy that lives on the outside, the guy is going to say, this Yid that was living with me, he just left, he went away. He feels safe to be able to hurt this Yid because the Yid on the inside Chatzar can't check up on him as easily. The guy could raise a chayes and say, the Yid that was with me left and went away.
So the question is what? Because it seems like the question was first the opposite. No? No?
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
But now, the second side is for kid then, b'pnimis, no?
There's a Yid and a guy that are living on the outside Chatzar. So what the Gemara is saying is, if the Yid and the guy are living on the inside Chatzar, then it's a davar pasha that the Yid on the outside Chatzar could check up on the Yid and the guy that are living on the inside Chatzar. So in such a case, the Yid feels comfortable to live with a guy over there. So the Gzeir of Chazal, that the guy should disturb the Erev Chatzeres, applies. If the Yid and the guy are living on the outside Chatzar, so over here, it's not so easy for the Yid on the inside Chatzar to check up on the Yid and the guy in the outside Chatzar. Because the guy could raise the chayes and say, this Yid that was living with me just left. So maybe in such a case, the Gzeir of Chazal does not apply, because a Yid will never want to live with a guy in such a situation. Or no, or maybe not. Hachanami mirsas. Even in such a case, the Yid is afraid to live with a guy in such a situation. And therefore, the Gzeir of Chazal does not apply. A Yid does not want to live alone with a guy in such a situation. Again, sorry, let me repeat that again. Hachanami mirsas, the guy. So mirsas refers to the guy. The guy is afraid. Even in such a case, the Yid could check up on the guy. The Savar hashtas Yisrael v'chazili. The guy always thinks to himself that any moment this Yid that's living on the inside Chatzar is too close to me. Any moment he can come up and check up on me. And therefore, the guy is afraid to harm the Yid, and therefore the Yid is not mine to live together with the guy there. And the Gzeir of Chazal does apply. Again, the basis of the whole inyan is the Chazal do not want a Yid to live with a guy in order not to learn from the ways of a guy. In a situation where a Yid will not live with the guy anyways, Chazal did not make their Gzeir. In a situation where they're afraid that a Yid is going to live with the guy, they made their Gzeir to motivate a Yid not to live with the guy. So the Shaila is, when the Yid is with the guy in the outside Chatzar, is that a situation that a Yid feels safe to live with a guy there, or not? Amalei, so Rav answered Rabbi Loza, Ten l'chacham v'yech gamayt. If you give a wise person one halacha, he can learn and understand from there to apply it to another halacha. This is an expression that Rabbi used many, many times. Ten l'chacham v'yech gamayt. It's a pasuk actually in Mishlei, Kehelis, Mishlei. What Rashi says, what he was saying to him is, just like I told you the previous halacha, in a case where the Yid and the guy are on the inside Chatzar, that the guy disturbs the Erev Chatzeres, the same as if the Yid and the guy in the outside Chatzar, there's no difference. That's what he was trying to tell him.
What is about today with sharing your alley with the guy?
Huh?
Sharing your alley with the guy, so...
It's also the same problem. In today's day and age, you're alley with a guy, you're in a guy in a building, an apartment building. This is a big problem with Erev Chatzeres. How could you make an Erev Chatzeres if there's a guy living there? So you have to be seicher from the guy, you have to give him something, you can give him even less than a shava pruta. You give him something to be seicher his space from him. There's other eitzes for it. We'll see over here from the Hemshel of the Gemara. But this whole Gemara of a guy living amongst the Yid, that it's a problem with Erev Chatzeres, is very, very, very negay, b'zman hazeh, all the time. Resh Lakish v'talmidei the Rab Chanina iklu la'ahu pundik. They came to this kretschma, to this inn. V'lo have a seicher. So this was an inn that was owned by a guy. But now this guy that owned this inn, so again, the issue here is if it's a guy that has an ownership in this place, so even if these Yidden that are staying in this inn and this motel for Shabbos, if they make an Erev Chatzeres with themselves, it's not going to work because there's a guy that's there with them. He has an ownership in this place. But then there was another problem, that this guy that owned this inn, he really rented out this inn to another person. And v'lo have a seicher, the other guy that he rented out this inn to was not there. V'have a masker, the owner, the renter, was not there, but the owner of the place was there. So now they were thinking to themselves, Omer, what do you usually do? There's a guy amongst you. What do you have to do in order to be able to make an Erev Chatzeres? You have to give him something to rent the space from him. But over here, the person that's, the guy that's now renting this place, and he has now the current rights to this place, is not here. The masker, the owner, is here. So Amru, they said, Ma'u lemeger minei. Could we rent from this owner even though he rented it out to another guy? So the Gemara explains, if this owner does not have the ability to send away this renter at any time, it's not a question that you can't rent from this owner, because this owner has no rights to this place right now. It's the seicha that has rights to this place and he's not here. When is there a question? In a case where this owner rented it out to another guy, but he has the ability to remove this renter from the property at any time. What's going to be the din? Do we say that since this owner has the rights to remove the renter, the guy, at any time, agrinon, so therefore we could rent from this owner as well? Or no, or do we say that now this person is not the owner, he's the owner, but someone else rented it from him, so therefore we can't rent from him this space in order to be able to make an Erev Chatzeres. Amalan Resh Lakish, so Resh Lakish says, Niskar, let's be makel, let's be lenient, and let's rent the space from this owner, and then do it this way. And when we'll come to our Rebbes that live in the south, Nishalan, we'll ask them if we did the right thing or not. Also, Shaila Rab Office, they asked this question of Rab Office if they did the right thing. Amalahan Yofa Asisem Shesachartem. You did the right thing, even though you rented the space from an owner that already rented out this space to another guy. But because this owner has the right to be misalik, the renter from this place, you did the right thing to rent from him. So this Gemara is what's brought b'zman hazeh b'negeh to renting from a guy, and I think that most people this is what we rely on. In the case where you have a guy that lives amongst Yidden, so usually you have to give the guy to rent from him his rishus for Shabbos. And according to Rashi, according to some Rishonim, you have to give him every single Shabbos something. Every single Shabbos you have to give him something to rent from him the space in order to be able to carry in an Erev Chatzeres in a building where there's a guy living there. So what do we rely on? We rely on giving money to the mayor of the city that has a certain ownership, he has certain rights that he could enter in and be mesalik anybody that's there in his space. He has the rights. The Gemara brings this up also later. In a place where you have the government of the city has rights to enter into your apartment. They have rights to enter into your place. For example, on Molig Zeiten, you have in times of a war, when the army is traveling and comes into a city, they could enter into your house and they could say that you have to give up your house for the soldiers to be able to live there. So even though there's a guy living there, but the very fact that there's the government of the city and they have the rights to enter into your house, you could be seicher the place from the government, and you don't have to be seicher from the individual guy that lives with you. So there's a big discussion in Paiskim whether in modern day today this applies as well. When you have a mayor of a city, what kind of a rights does a mayor of a city have today to enter? The government, the police have a right to enter into a person's home with a search warrant. Do they have the rights to, others want to use, what is it called again, eminent domain, to be able to take over a person's private space. So the government has a right to come and take over your private space if they desire to do so. So that would be enough. Huh?
They have to pay.
Okay, so nine, but they still have the right to come in and to take over the place. And this case over here also, when he's misalik this person, how's he misalik this person? He has to pay him. He rented from him. You have a right at any time to be misalik him. So there's a big discussion based on this Gemara over here, when I get to this inyan.
About if the owner of the building is a Yid.
Huh?
The owner of the building is a Yid.
But he rented out one apartment to a guy.
Right.
You can't
Huh?
be selling
So the halacha, use the...
He's worse
I
than-
believe Rabbi Yashiv says you can't rely on it, but a lot of other poskim say you could rely on it. So I'm not sure whether you have to give the guy in the building something, schidus for this.
Every Shabbos.
I don't think we follow that shit. That's Rashi's shit. But the other
What's it mean
Rishonim
to
say
give
not every Shabbos.
What does it mean to give the mayor? They actually, so what they gave the mayor,
You give the mayor once a year. Once a year, you give him something, a mashu or something. Yeah, this is for the. Yeah. Sure. You have to tell him that it's 100%. So it's done with the mayor of the city for all the people of the city.
If the owner of the building is a Yid,
So that's a different
He
story.
rents out to the guy. He says he's leaving $1, then it's for himself.
Okay, so maybe
He
that works
doesn't rent
also.
out that.
Okay, can sein, like we said before, schira lekite. So for sure, if the owner is a yid, could be. Okay, let's see one more story of here. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Rav Chanina bar Yosef, Rav Chia bar Abba, Rav Asi, these three Amiroim, Iklu lahu pundik. They came together on Shabbos to a hotel. The Asa Nachri Mare the pundik b'Shabbata. Now the guy, the owner of the hotel, arrives in the middle of Shabbos. When they came before Shabbos, the owner of the hotel, the guy, was not present. This whole problem that there's a ownership of a guy in the chutzah that you're there for Shabbos is only if the guy is present. If the guy is not present, even if he has an ownership, it's not a problem. Because if the guy is not there, Chacham didn't make the gzera. They didn't want you to live with the guy. The fact that he has ownership is not an issue. If he's not present, but what happened is the guy arrived on Shabbos. Once the guy arrives on Shabbos, so now the whole eight of chatzeres that they made before Shabbos is bottle. It's null and void because the guy is here now. It's mevatel the whole eight of. So now they were discussing, can we rent from the guy on Shabbos itself? We can give him something, we can give him some mashru or something, and rent from him on Shabbos itself. What was the shaila? Should we say seiche k'ma'arav dami? Renting from a guy his space in the chotzer, is that similar to the halacha of an eruv? Ma ma'arav me'boid yoim. An eruv chatzeres has to be made from before Shabbos. Av seiche me'boid yoim. So too to rent from a guy his space has to be from before Shabbos. Or dilmor, maybe not seiche k'mevatel reshus dami. The halacha of a seiche is like the halacha of a person that's mevatel is reshus. As I mentioned before, this if you don't make an eruv chatzeres, what could you do? You mevatel your rishus in the chotzer, and then the other person can carry there. And that bittul rishus, when you renounce your rights in the your chotzer, you give up your rights in the chotzer, that could be done on Shabbos. It doesn't have to be done before Shabbos. So should we say that renting from the guy a space, that could be done on Shabbos as well? Just like bittul rishus can be done on Shabbos, it could also be done on Shabbos. Afilu b'Shabbos. Ma mevatel rishus, afilu b'Shabbos, af seiche, afilu b'Shabbos. So there was a machlokes amongst them. Rav Chanina bar Yosef Amar Nisker. Chanina bar Yosef says we can rent from the guy even on Shabbos. We'll give him something, give him some food, give him something, and tell him that you rent from him a space. You can do it on Shabbos. Rav Asi Yama, no, loy Nisker. We can't rent from him the space on Shabbos. Amlu Rab Chia bar Abba. Rab Chia bar Abba said, Nismoich al divrei zaken. Let's rely on Rab Chanina bar Yosef, that was the older one amongst them. The Nisker, and we'll rent from on Shabbos. Rashi explains, it's not going to fully be matter them to carry 100%. Because once the guy came in, the eight of chatzeres that they made before Shabbos is bottle. If they're going to rent that space from a guy, the eight of chatzeres is not going to become activated again. The eight of chatzeres is bottle. Elamai, what are they going to do? They're going to rent from the guy, and then everyone there is going to be mevatel their rishos to one person. Everyone's going to be mevatel, and then at least from one person's room they'll be able to carry out. But to reactivate the Erev Chatzeres, that's not an Eitzah anymore. They wanted to be able to do bittul rishos after they're going to rent from the guy. One second. Amul Rab Chia bar Abba. So Rab Chia bar Abba said, Nisbach al divrei zaken v'niska. We're going to rent from the guy. Also, Shaila le Rab Yechanan. They came and they asked Rab Yechanan this Shaila. Amulahen yafa sisem shesachartem. You did okay, you did the right thing that you rented from the guy, and even on Shabbos, it's not a problem. The people of Nardoi were wondering about this. Is this the right thing? Are you able to rent from a guy even on Shabbos? So the question that you asked about Yafa Sisa Shezachartim that you rented even on Shabbos, L'chayri, there's a gzeira of Chazal, you're not allowed to make any transactions on Shabbos. How could you rent from a guy on Shabbos? So that the Gemara doesn't address, but there's a small taisus here in the middle of the Amid, towards the bottom of the Amid, that says one line in taisus. See the taisus, Yafa Sisa Shezachartim, Le'dami L'mekech Memker, Le'yasa B'Shabbos, Le'hava Ele Kematona Ba'al Meshein Eisnel Leheta Tiltol. It's not a regular kind of a transaction. The next taisus. It's only being done. You're giving him a little gift. They give him a piece of challah. They give him something tiny. It could even be less than a shava pruti. You give him a little matana. They're not doing it because they want to buy something. They want to rent. They're doing it in order to be mekayim the takon of chazal to be able to carry there. So in that case, in such a case, the gzeira of mekach memka doesn't apply. So let's go back to the Gemara. The Gemara was wondering about Rabbi Yechanan. Did Rabbi Yechanan say that you could rent from a guy on Shabbos? V'amar Rabbi Yechanan said, Seiche kema'arev. We compare renting from a guy a space to be able to carry in the chatzar like an Erev Chatzeris. Legavi, what do we compare them? My love, don't you think, what did Rabbi Yechanan mean to say? Ma ma'arev me'boid yom. Just like an Erev Chatzeris has to be made before Shabbos. Av seichem me'boid yom. So too, renting from a guy has to be done from before Shabbos. So the Gemara says, Loi, no, that's not what Rabbi Yechanan meant to say. When he was comparing seicha from a guy to Erev Chatzeris, it's for another reason. The Gemara here gives three comparisons. Just like an Erev Chatzeris could be done with food that's less than a Shava Pruta. When you pay a guy to rent from him the space, it could be even with less than a Shava Pruta. Second thing, just like an Erev Chatzeris, it doesn't have to be the owner of the house that makes the Erev Chatzeris. Even a Schira Lekitoi, a person that works in the house, could also make the Erev Chatzeris. The Gemara said before, even if the owner of the house is a guy, and there's a Yid working for him. The Yid, which is a worker, can make the Erev Chatzeris. So, the same thing is also when you rent from a guy, it doesn't have to be with the guy himself, it could be even with his worker. And the third thing, and just like when it comes to Erev Chatzeris, 5 people that are in one Chatzer, Echad ma'arev al yedei kulan, one person could be a shliach for all 5. If he wants to make an Erev Chatzeris with the next Chatzer over, he takes food and he has in mind everybody else and he makes an Erev for everybody else with shlichus. One second. Seicher nami, so too Seicher as well. 5 sheshruim b'chatzer achas. Echad seicher al yedei kulan. One person can approach the guy and rent from the guy the space and have everyone in mind. He doesn't have to have the askama of everyone. He could do the shlichus for everybody. So Rabbi Yechanan was comparing seicher to ma'arev only for these 3 halachas, but not benegeh to doing schiris on Shabbos. Rabbi Yechanan says that schiris could be done on Shabbos, just like bittul rishus that could be done on Shabbos. Okay.
Is there any shluchas? I mean, then,
yeah, it's based on shluchas.
So chiddush of the shluchas.
Bittul rishus, I guess, cannot be done through shlichus. Bittul rishus,
you can do it.
Rashi says, "Have a shliach lechaveira." You're a shliach, and it's a schus. Even if you don't ask, zachan l'adam shaloi b'fanim. That's why shlichus. Why should a person adarabi? You're only giving the person the ability to be able to carry from this chatzah to another chatzah. It's a din of shlichus. Okay, I'm not sure. I heard a question. No.